But first, I'd like to thank Governor Cuomo for asking me to join him in launching the second Operation Hang Up campaign. Our message today is very simple. Distracted driving is dangerous driving and will not be tolerated in New York State. One of the core responsibilities for the state police is ensuring safety of the millions of New Yorkers who take to the highway every day. During the last Operation Hang Up, which took place Thanksgiving last year, 800 drivers were ticketed for violating the texting law. In 2012 alone, we have ticketed 65,000 drivers for using electronic devices while driving. Operation Hang Up was launched 12 hours ago. Since then, 150 tickets have been issued. The law the governor signed last summer gave us the tools necessary to engage in these successful campaigns. Before the law, we couldn't stop someone solely for writing or reading or texting while driving. The driver had to be committing another offense, such as speeding, in order for law enforcement to pull them over. Now, troopers see firsthand what can happen to people who text or become distracted behind the wheel. Last year in New York State, driver inattention and distraction was the #1 cause of motor vehicle crashes. Lives are lost, people are injured, and property is damaged, and it's all preventable. That's exactly why we're here today, to encourage people not to text or to use their mobile devices when driving. Do yourself, your family, and your fellow drivers a favor and go hands-free when on the phone. We're here to enforce the law. A violation will cost you $150 plus 3 points against your license. We all know how fast technology is evolving, and while it helps law enforcement, it also creates challenges. It is important that our laws keep pace with the changing landscape, and that is what our mission is all about. I want to thank the governor and all our partners for help keeping our roads safe. I am now pleased to introduce John Corlett, the Legislative Committee Chairman of AAA New York. John, would you please come up?
Thank you, Colonel, and I'd like to thank the state police and the governor in particular for championing the fight against this distracted driving. And 1 year ago, New York had, as the Colonel mentioned, a secondary enforcement law, and thanks to champions in the state legislature and the governor, New York State now has a primary law, which represented a very significant improvement. As the Colonel mentioned, distracted driving is a very dangerous behavior. For 3 reasons. There's the physical distraction of holding the phone, the visual distraction of looking at the phone, and the mental distraction. So it's perhaps the most dangerous, careless conduct you can engage in while driving. Just to go over some of the figures, nationally more than 5,000 people are killed every year in distracted driving accidents. Nearly 500,000 are injured. One study out of the University of Utah said it was worse than drunk driving. You're 6 times more likely to crash. What's particularly troubling is teenagers, and automobile crashes are the leading cause of death for young people in this country. And teenagers are more prone to engage in the use of portable electronic devices while driving. Last month in March, our Foundation for Traffic Safety actually found that, in particular, young women are twice as likely to use electronic devices while driving. Perhaps no one is more effective and passionate in the fight against distracted driving, and that's J.C. Good, so I'd like to introduce her as our next speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am J.C. Good. I'm 25 years old, and I'm just here to tell you my story. My story starts May 18th of 2008. It was my college graduation day. You know, everything I had worked for my whole life, just the best morning. And my parents and I had an hour-and-a-half drive to get home, and then I'd be home for a month. Then I was moving to Brooklyn. I had my dream job. I'd be working for Habitat for Humanity, just trying to make the world a little bit better place. And it was just an hour and a half drive home, and we'd done it so many times. And on that day, we never got home. We got about halfway home and came to a green light. At the same time, there was a tractor trailer going just opposite us who also came to a green light. And at the same time, there was an 18-year-old young man who was on the intersecting road who came to a red light. And that young man was just having a conversation on his handheld cell phone. He never even saw that red light. He turned left into the intersection, and the tractor trailer swerved to try and miss him, but swerved in the oncoming lane of traffic and hit our car head on. At the time, both my parents were dead on impact. Neither one of them left the scene. I was lucky to survive, extremely lucky. I had 2 broken feet, a broken wrist, a broken tibia, a broken fibula, a shattered pelvis, a broken collarbone, a lacerated liver, partially collapsed lungs, damaged carotid arteries, and a traumatic brain injury. And these are things that I now live with for the rest of my life because of this person's decision to talk on the phone while he was driving. Whatever he had to talk about was more important than my parents' lives or my planned livelihood. But I think what I like to point out is kind of what I really have lost, and what my parents lost. My parents were 58 years old, and they had worked their whole lives saving up money, planning their retirement, and they never got to do that. They don't get to be the grandparents they were so excited to be. They just had their lives ended so that someone could talk on the phone. And it was absolutely senseless and 100% preventable. And I think that's why we're here today. Distracted driving is something that can be put to an end with the laws. New York has the strongest laws in the country, and the laws don't do anything unless we enforce them, and that's what this is all about. So let people know that we care about this issue, and we don't want people dying so that we can talk on our phones while we're driving. And that's why we're out here today. And I think what it comes down to, these crashes are happening so frequently that it's an issue. If it hasn't touched your life or your community already, it's only a matter of time until everyone has felt the pain of these losses, and it's absolutely senseless. So I really just want to thank the governor for putting the resources of the state behind this to really prove that we can stop the senseless pain. And on that note, it is my great pleasure to introduce the governor of the state of New York, Mr. Andrew Cuomo.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. First to the State Police and Colonel Fazio, thank you very much, Colonel, for your participation today and your good work and the good work of the State Police all across the state. John Corlett from the AAA, it's a pleasure to be with you. We thank you, and your organization also has been a tremendous asset here, and we thank you very much. And to J.C. Good, thank you so much for being here. And when you hear J.C.'s story, I think you have two messages. First, the personal message, the inspiration that you are, that your strength gives all of us, that your infectious energy, and that you care enough to have dedicated your life to getting out your message and telling your story, as hard as it is to tell that story over and over and over again. You're doing it because it'll make a difference in people's lives, and it will help other people. And that is a statement about you and your character. That is a truly beautiful and inspiring statement, and we thank you very much for being with us today. J.C. Good. The second message you get when you hear J.C.'s story is how pointless this was. It was totally unnecessary. It was totally avoidable. And you know, life creates enough issues for us. We don't need to be creating unnecessary pain and unnecessary hardship. And that's exactly what this is. Driving while texting, driving on a cell phone. It is dangerous. It is reckless. It is selfish. It is uncaring. It is illegal. So just don't do it. And that's what the message is about today. The numbers are staggering. You've heard them before. Drivers who talk on a phone are 4 times more likely to be involved in a collision. Last year, 3,000 people died in distracted driving related incidents. 3,000 people. How unnecessary. Now, this is about changing a culture. It is, and we've gone through this before. This state of New York was the first state in the nation to mandate the use of seatbelts in 1984. Before 1984, nobody used the seatbelt. And when that law was passed, it was a trauma to the system. And now you wouldn't think twice about using a seatbelt. We've changed the culture. It is commonplace. People put on a seatbelt. A whole generation of kids grew up knowing that they're supposed to put on a seatbelt. We have to make the same kind of culture change with these electronic devices. They are part of our culture, and we use them, and we all have them, and we walk around with them. I get it. I have one, but not in a car. The law can help change the culture, and that's what we're trying to do with this law. It is very clear. It is illegal to use a handheld electronic device while you are operating a motor vehicle, period. And we're going to enforce the laws of vehicle to change the culture. 65,000 tickets issued just this year on this infraction since the beginning of the year. 65,000 tickets statewide. So we don't get it yet. We really don't. We haven't heard JC's message, and we haven't changed the culture, and we're going to stay at it until we will. It is especially a problem with young people, and it is especially a problem with teenagers, because it's putting 2 things together. First, they're not really familiar with driving a car. I'm going through this now at home. I have 3 teenage daughters. I was more frightened to hear the statistic that young ladies use the devices more than the men. But I have 2 young, my oldest girls, my twins are starting to drive now. And it's frightening, because you're trying to express to them how dangerous this can be. They don't really have the feel for it. They haven't had that experience. They haven't gone through the experiences that give you a sense of fear and protection in the vehicle. And they are wed to those personal electronic devices. You know, they've been using them all their lives. They walk around with them. They do it like second nature. You know, if their thumbs aren't moving, they don't know if they're alive. You know, it's more instructive than a beating heart or thumbs that are moving on the device. And the device goes off, you know, they'll run across the room. They have to know what's happening. You know, God forbid there's a 5-second delay in response to the PDA. You know, the world may change. That has no place in the vehicle. So this culture that grew up with these, that is then just learning to drive, it poses a double challenge. And that's what today is all about. Save money, save points on your license, and save lives. Do not use electronic devices while you're operating the vehicle, period. Let me ask the Colonel to join us. Join me up here now, and JC and John, if you will. Any questions from the media, we'll take it. Thank you all very much for being here. And JC, thank you again for being here and sharing your story.
Governor, with the sophisticated entertainment system, cars today, GPS, smiling, hands-free phone inside a car, isn't the real issue that our culture assumes that drivers can multitask?
You know, I think there's no doubt that the cars today, in many ways, from an engineering point of view, pose more distractions with the touch screens and the devices. Those are devices that, when the car is engineered on a federal level, they're making the determination after due assessment that those devices can be operated safely in a car. We're talking now about additional devices, right? Not approved in-dash devices that are attached to the car, This is now a BlackBerry, it's a Game Boy, it's some electronic game that you're playing, or a cell phone. And that's a tipping point to me. But your point is exactly right. There are enough distractions just driving a car, especially with all the additional electronic equipment and all the things that are going on outside of the vehicle. But there's a tipping point that you just overload, and there's an unnecessary tipping point. You know, a navigational device you need at that moment to operate the car. You don't need to be playing a game. You don't need to be checking your email while you're driving the car. It's a good question, Jacob. I can check for you what data we have in New York or nationwide. Maybe John in the AAA can help us. Well, we have, in essence, we do. We passed a law that increased the penalty, right? So it is a crackdown legally that continues 365 days a year. This is an additional intensive, heightened period, and part of it is for us to get the message out. We want people to understand, you know, there are a lot of laws that seem to be passed, and there are a lot of laws that are ignored. What this week is about is making sure we highlight this law and we communicate to the people of the state. It's a new law. We're serious about it. It didn't go away. It's not going to go away, and we're going to stay at it until we actually change the culture. Again, I'll go back to the seatbelt analogy. I remember when that law was passed. I'm old enough to remember 1984. And nobody wore a seatbelt, period. And nobody was going to wear a seatbelt. You know, the attitude was, well, that's just one of those laws, and they'll forget about it, and it will go away if we ignore it, you know. That wasn't the case. We stayed at it. We changed the culture, and we're going to do the same thing here. No, I've seen it. I'm sure we've all seen it. It is still commonplace. You know, this has gone on for many years now, and people don't change their behavior pattern that quickly. So it's going to take time. It's going to take reinforcement. It's going to take tickets. As I said, 65,000 tickets just since the beginning of this year, just in this state. So, no, people are doing it. You know, anyone who spends as much time, I see it all the time. I spend a lot of time in the car. But no, people do it, and it's prevalent for sure. No, I haven't made a fuss personally. I haven't gone up and tapped on the window and said, I'm the governor, put that down. I'm serious. But this week I will. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you all.